Okay, let's go. Yesterday I played another classical match, and I want to look at it, as there are a couple of things that I really want to focus on, uh, because there's one move that I tanked for like half an hour on, and I still am unsure what I should have done. I think my move is best, but it's still not good. I think that's the answer. But we'll see. I do have the notes. Let's see how far I can get without them. So I played the move e4, uh, and my opponent played c5, and we go into a Najdorf position after d6, d4, and take, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Um, my opponent was spending a lot of time in the opening and especially in the opening actually, uh, and in the early middle game as well. Uh, at some point I had spent 15 minutes, and my opponent had spent over 45. And after uh, after one move, I completely cancelled out my time advantage. And after that, we got into some time trouble as well, but that's for later. I once prepped this variation of the Najdorf, which I kind of have been enjoying, although it's not probably the best thing you can do. It's definitely one of the better ways to play it, and it's the old main line, which goes bishop g5, e6, f4, bishop e7, queen f3, and then then you castle long probably, and then play on. Because well, you can also play bishop c4 sometimes if allowed, and try to attack the king and play e5, f5, stuff like that. This also prevents b5, because if here b5, then I take and e5 and I win. And you have to take, otherwise knight d5 comes, and that's still probably okay, but it's not as good. And b5 is the main move that you want to play here, but it's impossible in this case. The main move in this position is actually queen c7, and the point is that bishop c4 is a big deal, and you'd want to play knight bd7, but then bishop c4 and you just hang on e6, and it's like you have to move the knight again basically, because otherwise I just sack on e6, and it's just terrible. I'm fairly certain. Maybe this is still fine. I thought this was bad. This didn't happen either, but I mean, it's not great. Moves that it's considering knight c5 to defend here. And let's say castle. Do you sack on e6 or no? Maybe not. Whatever. I thought I was fairly certain queen c7 was the main move, but my opponent didn't play that. My opponent played knight c6, which I knew was suboptimal, but I don't know how to play against it perfectly. I was fairly certain that taking is correct. And I mean, it makes sense that taking is correct because of the attack on the b pawn here, or the c pawn now, and you can't ever play b5, and the bishop on c8 gets basically, it starts crying because it's just terrible. If you can keep the pawn there at least. And here I saw something interesting. I can do a lot of things, but I want to prevent both of these basically. Mostly I want to prevent e5 actually, because d5 is no longer a square for me, so e5 can be quite annoying. Playing e5 myself attacks here and attacks here, so forces knight d5. I can do this, Or I can do this, which is the other option, but then you can take here. Bishop d7 just barely holds. And then this pawn is just lost still, because... Actually, yeah, because it's just defended sufficiently. This is probably... It feels like this should be better, right? Oh, it's just terrible for me. Lol. Good thing I didn't go for that. I played e5, and knight d5 happened. My bishop is hanging. I can take here, or I can take here. I decided to take here. And the point is that on queen takes, I can take here. Or actually, on queen takes, I wouldn't even take there, I think. I didn't necessarily want to take, but maybe I should have. I wanted to use the d6 square, because I can reroute my knight to e4. I can move knight e4 immediately. But then you take there, and maybe that's not as good for me. So instead I took knight does take, and I play I long castle here, and the point is that I pin the pawn. Also knight takes e7 defends this pawn, which is kind of important. Long castle, pin the pawn, threaten to take it, basically forcing d5. And here I can play knight e4 going to d6. If the knight is on d6, you can try to kick it with knight f5. But I think if that happens, I can take it and be fine. If you play knight f5 first, then I can kick it, and that's still good. Note that you can't take because this is check, and then like that or something. So you can't take it yet. So what do? Well, my opponent castled, and the point is that they threatened to just take, because this is no longer check and they can take my queen in between. And I thought I was doing very well here. And here I haven't spent that much time yet, like a minute per move on average or so, maybe a minute and a half. My opponent was already tanked for quite a bit here. Especially on e6 they spent a lot of time, on knight c6 they spent a lot of time, on d5 they spent a lot of time, and on castling also a little bit. So yeah. Here I could go to d6, but then knight f5, I did not feel like that's great yet. I thought that there were options of just, because the only reason that this is still pinned, so the only reason this is a threat is because my queen is there. So I thought, okay, I'll just move my queen, and then keep options open of knight d6, but also knight f6 and knight g5. I think the knight on e4 is placed very well. Doesn't need to move yet. So I played knight or queen h3. Yes, queen h3. Here my opponent tagged again. Now down to less than half an hour left, and I had approximately 1 hour left here. They found a good move, I think. Knight g6. Attacking this pawn. I can always play knight g5 here to force h6, but that didn't seem to do much other than that. I can play... There are lines in which I can play knight f6, but once the knight is gone I can't. I could go to d6, but then I lose the f-pawn. I can play g3, but I didn't like playing g3 because then my queen can't return, and I'm foreseeing a lot of this thing happening. So, I mean, knight g6 was also kind of forced because of queen, or because of actually knight f6, I believe, already threatens to win the game. Right? Yeah, I believe if they did nothing, I believe knight f6 check just wins. Right? Because oh, you can play you I thought that I could give a check, but you can still just block. I guess knight f6 isn't good yet. There's probably a point where knight f6 is good, but I believe knight f5 at least just loses, or is not as good. But knight g6 I missed a bit, and in the end I went queen e3, which I mean, I saw my opponent's next move, and I saw that there were a lot of options for me, especially that knight f6 became kind of an option, because the queen moves, and the queen moves to a5. That did actually happen. Attacking here and attacking here. So here I went into a massive tank, and there are 4 good options, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, that I all wanted to calculate. Knight c3, let's look at knight c3 first, because it makes the most sense. It defends this pawn, but I think it's probably the worst of them, because of c5 threatening d4. I don't actually need to move, but my knight will get kicked next turn, so I'd have to play like a3. I don't have to move because I have queen e4 here, rook b8, and now my knight can move again to b1, I wanna say. And now I'm definitely just worse, right? Yeah, -2. So knight c3 was the first one I said, no, I'm not gonna play that. I'll just sack a pawn on a2 and just hope that that's good enough. I'm still kind of sick. Don't know you. Yeah. The last tournament there was a in the tournament there was a cold that ran through a lot of people, and I also got it in the end, but it took a while. So yeah, knight c3 was never an option for me, so I was looking at these things. Knight f6 is interesting, because if you take and I take, I am threatening f5, and if the knight ever moves I can do one of these two. So if you don't want to lose your knight, because f5 take f5, queen h6 and mate is unavoidable. So if you don't want to lose your knight, you have to play king h8 right now. But after that I didn't see it. I didn't see if this was good enough or not. I think f5 still. Forcing this. And then maybe this is the trick. You just sack the queen and go, no, that doesn't actually work because knight blocks, and then you can escape. But I can maybe just play rook h3. No, I can't. Yeah, this is. I don't think this is good enough. No, -3 makes sense. So it's not knight c3, not knight f6. Those are. That's also what I assumed. So I had 2 left. Knight d6 does not feel like it does much, actually. Especially since my counterplay needs to be here. So knight d6. It looks good, but I don't think it's. I think knight g5 is the best, and that's actually what I played as well. Knight g5 happened. And my opponent took the a pawn. And my point was bishop d3, so that if my opponent tries to win the second pawn, I can eventually get a safe square on e2. And from there I can take here or h4, h5. I could slowly start attacking, and my king is kind of safe. It's also just a good attacking piece, and it's kind of useful as a defense on c2 in a lot of lines as well. I thought bishop d3 made sense. My opponent, instead of winning the pawn, tried to win it like this. But here I had a new option. Here I could save the pawn. I could play b3. This had a different issue though, which, I mean, you basically, yeah, you don't have to go into, but you should probably go into. So queen a3 check makes sense. There are two options. So let's look at king d2 first. You get queen b4 check, let's say here or whatever, and you lose this pawn and basically a forced queen trade. So black is up 2 pawns and you have no more queen, you have no more counterplay, and the game is probably just over. So instead I played king b1. And yes, there is a perpetual check here. And notes that you can't ever play bishop d2 because you lose a full queen. So this is just a perpetual, because I have to go here, and then the game is just perpetual. So that's something that my opponent could play, but they tried to go for the win, of course. Makes sense. At this point they weren't, they didn't have all the match point or the board. Most of the matches were still going on, so they didn't know how well they were doing. In the end, I'll kind of spoil this. In the end, my match was the last one that was still going, and they were up 4-3, so a draw would have been enough for them for match points. But my opponent wanted to win, of course. So they played c5, I want to say. Let's I'll double check that for a second. 19. Yes, c5 happened. And threatening c4, of course. So I tried to create some counterplay and actually defend the b3 pawn a bit more. What I did is I took the knight. Note that you're forced to take with the f pawn, because h takes and you just get checkmated and there's nothing you can do. Right? You can, well, maybe you can do this. Maybe you can just barely survive. And how do you defend that? Like this. And yeah, maybe you just barely survive this. Oh, rook takes d5. I was looking for something like this. I was looking at that, but this is just like... I mean, there must be a win somewhere. Is it this? No, that's a perpetual, because you always have rook takes b3. Oh, you just take the rook. I missed that. Yeah, then it's just better, of course. But you're forced to play f takes, because on queen h3 you can also always play h6. This does kind of lose the e-pawn though. But that creates a pin, so it's not great. One thing I also didn't mention, but there is queen a7 here. It's not good, but it does exist. But like, you can play rook b7 and there's just nothing. But it is interesting that it exists. But yeah, f takes g6. Here I played rook d3, and the point is that I just defend the pawn, and I think I can safely do this. My opponent plays h6 here, kicking the knight. And I I spent like 10 minutes trying to calculate, can I sacrifice my knight by just leaving it there? In the end I decided to not do that actually. But moving it is also kind of annoying. Maybe I should genuinely just go to h3 here. But I didn't like that. I went to f3 in the end. And my idea is that I will relatively quickly get it active again like that. And maybe start some counterplay still on the king side. And instead of playing c4, which I think is probably good, forcing rook c3, they can't play d4, but maybe they can, but they can win this pawn, and it's maybe, oh wait, I have knight takes d3, d4, that's also a thing. But I think this is still just good. My opponent slowed it down a bit, played bishop d7 first. I thought bishop a4 was coming. Never happened. I don't have a good way to defend other than the way I'm already defending, so I played knight h4. It also helps me move my queen away in case of checks, so for example here, in case of attacks or at least. I believe this first would have been annoying, but I might have queen at g3 there. And maybe something like that. Maybe this is still okay. Actually, they can just take here. It doesn't look good enough. Yeah, I didn't have much else. So knight h4, c4 happened. Yes, forcing rook c3. And now again, instead of d4 or bishop a4, which I thought would be quite winning, they played a5 with the plan a4. Which is also probably winning. But it's just a move slower, and in that time I can take this pawn, get my knight active, attacking this rook. My opponent ran away. There's no double attack, no fork, but the queen is kind of stuck now. Rook fc8. And now here I try to... we basically have no time left, both of us, so here I try to kind of trick my opponent, not really, but just defend in a different way. Here I played queen c1. If they take, I take, and then this is again an issue, so they have to do something about that, and after that I can solve my issues here probably. Maybe king f7 is... sorry, not king f7 here, but maybe take, king f7 is good enough, but like... yeah, maybe this is just good enough as well. But my opponent didn't go for that. Queen b4. And now queen b2 happens. This pawn is still pinned, so I still can't take. But we're getting somewhere. Yeah. This pawn is now properly defended thrice. It's only attacked thrice, and I can actually add a defender still. Maybe even two. So I thought that this would be quite interesting. d4. Kicking my rook. I went here, because there's no better place, I think. I mean, maybe f3, but... I mean, there might be something here. And here my opponent made a small inaccuracy, I think, in time trouble, so it makes sense, but that it happens. But they played the move a4 here. And that just loses the d-pawn. And also, especially, this pawn is kind of pinned, so now I can trade queens the moment they take on b3. And suddenly I'm no longer in that much trouble. Also I can take here, or go here and win the exchange. But mostly I'm just no longer in trouble. They played bishop e8, which is again slow. They're trying to get rid of my knight. But that's also why I put the rook there, was kind of to defend the knight in case of king f7 or king h7 options as well. And here I went queen d6 trying to trade queens again. Which, I mean, yeah, I have to do something. I think queen d6 makes sense. We traded here. Here my opponent should have played king f7 to save the e-pawn, force me to go here, and only then take on b3, like that. But maybe still the d6 pawn is annoying. Currently we're equal material. Let's say I take once, and let's say pawn takes. I mean, rook d1, and like this pawn is running. This pawn is kind of stopped by my king. So I think this is probably quite good for me, actually. Let's see. This didn't happen, by the way, but okay, it's a draw. That also makes sense. But king f7 is definitely better than just taking here immediately. Because now I can take here. And now the pawn... Now I block the king out, and... Now this pawn is a serious menace. b2. My opponent tries to be tricky here. Rook he1, c3. Tries to basically create a checkmate threat like this. Checkmate in 2, and that's kind of... Technically that's unstoppable, but I'm just barely in time to trade off rooks. So, because I have d7 and I'm threatening rook e8. And that's just barely enough. d7, rook d8. Rook e8 check. You can't take, of course, king f7. Here I made a slight inaccuracy. I should take here. I should just... I think that we looked at it afterwards. Or I looked at it with someone else afterwards. I think I should take, and play rook e3. And I think this is winning for me. Because I'm up a pawn, and I win an extra pawn here. Because you can't trade rooks with me. Because I have a passed pawn here, and this is just... I can just hold that. So, yeah. And you can also try this. But then I even have rook g3, because you can't go for this pawn because of rook f3. Which is very similar to how the game went, actually. But I missed that I should just take the rook. Instead I played this, which I thought was interesting, was good as well. Oh, I misannotated that. I wrote it as rook e7, which is definitely not correct because both rooks are on the e-file. So it's wasn't good enough to find the to pick the good rook there. But I know that it was rook 1 e7, king f6, and now I should still take because I'm also threatening the other rook. So you once I take, you still have to take, and then this is still good enough. It's the same actually as before, but now the king is just up 1. But I instead play rook e3, which actually just loses because of rook d7. Rook takes d7, and I can't attack here because I can't take the rook because of rook d1, which I missed. I thought I could just take the rook, but rook d1. You can't promote because my rook defends, but you can play rook a1 and promote like that. We both had approximately a minute left, and I didn't see everything there. You can play rook d7, and then I just lose a rook because I have to take here still, because this is also just a threat. I can't actually... Oh, actually, maybe I still have this. No, that doesn't help, because you go here. Yeah, so I just lose here, but if my opponent just takes the pawn, fortunately they just go back. Also in time trouble with approximately 1 minute left. And now I make the correct play, and now the game ends like this. Rook g3 again. My opponent tries to do rook f2 to take the pawn, and resigns here. So I actually win this game somehow, despite the endgame being very sloppy, especially from my opponent. But the opening was very sloppy from me, I think. So let's take a look at it. And I especially want to look at knight g5, so move 16. That's the main thing that I want to look at. So this is just mainline Najdorf, or the old mainline Najdorf. Queen f3, knight c6 is suboptimal, which I knew. I know that the mainline is queen c7. And you should take, a long castle immediately, or bishop c4, e5 is fine. This is fine. And now knight e4, yeah, that makes sense as well. Just move to d6. I mean, they can take the e-pawn then, right? Oh, rook d1 and you still do it. Oh, that's actually very good. Yeah, take, rook d1. Let's say queen c7, don't want to calc properly. And now you take back and threaten here. You can also try queen a5 immediately, but b4. You'd have to find b4 and c3 for a tempo. That's fancy. And knight c4. I was not going to find knight c4. I would have just done this. But that's bad, of course. Yeah. Whatever. But castle is fine still. Allows d5, but knight e4 is still good. They have the castle, which is fine. Yeah, knight c5 I also looked at here. That seemed interesting, but I was too focused on going this direction in some way, because it's so easy to get some checkmate threats, because this bishop is dead and this knight can defend, but I have a knight and a queen, and like this is coming quite quickly like that. Let's make this a full line. So I thought that going that direction, this direction would have been a lot better. So I went queen h3, which is apparently suboptimal. Knight g6 is a good move, of course. Yeah, I looked at queen c3 as well, but I didn't like knight takes f4, so I went queen e3, queen a5. Yeah. It's not knight g5, obviously, then. It's not knight c3, though, either, for sure. Yeah, minus 1.5, minus 1.6, minus 2.4. Is yeah, 96. I don't think 96 makes sense to me. Queen c5 makes some sense. Knight c5 also kind of. But yeah. Queen takes a2 is just you win the pawn. Bishop d3. Maybe h4 is faster, but I like bishop d3. Rook b8. No, b3. Yes, and you should just play king d2. I don't. King d2 is not. Is just being worse without counterplay. This is way worse with counterplay. c5 first is good. I take, which is okay. Rook d3. This is all still terrible. Still terrible. d4 is winning. That makes sense to me. queen c1 just in time for d4 to no longer be completely winning. It's still very winning. c3 also makes a lot of sense here. Basically, I saw c3 of course, but you're just stuck. The queen just gets stuck here now. You can't ever. You have to go basically to. Yeah, you have to go there. Still a4 comes and the queen also just gets trapped here. Yeah, a4 gives the d pawn away. It's still good for my opponent, but that's... Now the game is playable again. C takes... Oh, because you can take on c2, then it's still fine. So you have to find c takes b3. My opponent did take on b3 apparently, but apparently king f7? That's not good enough? Oh, because I just defend, so now it's totally fine again. Yeah, that makes sense. I thought that king f7 would have been the move though, but apparently you have to really just find c takes b3 on 2 minutes or so. And now suddenly I'm better. Yeah, d7, rook d8, rook e8 check. I can still do that. Now I'm losing again because of rook takes d7, of course, just winning a rook. My opponent misses it, and now the game just ends. g3. And yeah, this is just game over. That's quite lucky. This is good. So yeah, we got to 4-4, which is surprising because our opponents were the team that were undefeated or haven't lost a match point yet, and now they have lost a match point against what is on paper the weakest team in the tournament or in the competition, which is us. And we are in, I want to say, actually I'm just going to look it up right now. No, wait, I don't think all the results are in yet, but I can definitely just look it up. Look up something here. So, yep. We're currently in second, but with an extra game played, so that doesn't count. There are 2 teams that are that can get in front of us. But these are both teams that we've already played against. So we are the second place team, but with an extra game. We have played against the team that's currently in first, third, and fourth, and sixth. So we still have 5, 7, and 8 left. I think we'll do quite well, which is surprising. We are on paper the weakest team. But like, I've gotten a lot better. I'm not the only one who's gotten a lot better. We have a new player who is also quite good, who is the lowest rated player on our team, but they're like playing, their rating is still improving. Just newly got a rating even, so yeah. It's going well. We don't win a lot of games, but we have a lot of match wins, which is also quite interesting. Last year we had relatively a lot of game wins for our match wins, because we had 14 game wins and in 5 matches and 0 match wins. Not even a draw. We got like 3.5, 4 times in a row. So yeah. This time we had 2 3.5s, 2 3s, and 2, I believe. That was our setup or something like that. So we get some points, but now we just tip the balance, which is quite fun. Now we're doing well. I'm happy. see you in the next round, which is actually the next round got cancelled due to weather. So I'll check the next round. Oh, I already closed the window, and it's the same window then, so I just need to go back here. This one is late February, and this one is this one, right? No. How do I find it? Do I need to really this one, and then scroll all the way because I can't find any better way to do this. Can I? No. This is very much imperfect, but there's not much I can think of other than this. Bit too far already. Sorry, I'm almost there. It should be this one, right? Here we go. Next match is early February. We'll be playing the next match. So the 7th. So I'll see you there. I've got some other things planned, but I might not do much with them because of exams and stuff. So I'll see you early February probably. Yo.